They basically figured out how to put an Android smartphone in a satellite and make it work. If you can make an Android app or do decent basic programming, you can control a satellite.
Hey, podcast listener, you're about to discover insider tips, tricks, and secrets to making more sales and converting more prospects into customers with email marketing. For more information about the Email Marketing Podcast or the Autoresponder Guy, go to dropdeadcopy.com/podcast. It's John McIntyre here, the Autoresponder Guy. I'm here with Brian Lim. Now, Brian is a very interesting guy and a bit different from the usual guest I get on here. I've spoken to marketers and entrepreneurs and business guys, and Brian is very much a business guy and an entrepreneur. But why I brought him on the show is I've been reading a book called Bold by Peter Diamandis, and it's all about how fast the world's changing and how much faster it's going to change over the coming years. And where this fits into business is I think a lot of people, when it comes to marketing and all that, everyone's talking about how you can build a better sales funnel, how you can build a better business, maybe even sell your business later on with all the startup stuff. But very few people, when you're doing that, a lot of people think that's freedom. That's when you get there, you can be happy, you can retire, you can live on the beach. Or you can go to Thailand and live on the beach and work while drinking coconuts or something. But you get there and then you realize it doesn't make you happy. And that all you've really done is created a platform on which to do something interesting with your life. And so why I wanted to talk to Brian was to have a bit of a chat about, once you get to that point, what some of the opportunities, what's going on in the world of business right now in terms of what's next? What's going to really get you pumped up and excited and passionate more than just building an internet business, something like that, something that's going to change the world. So it's a bit of a cliche, but I like it. Brian, how you going, man?
Very good. John, how are you?
I'm doing good, man. Now, one thing, I should have asked this before we started, but I was thinking, because you're originally from Singapore, right? But you've been in Australia for a while.
Yes, that's right.
Okay, so do you have, because I think you said mate before, do you have an Australian accent, do you think?
I think I have a little bit of it here, Dan. If you want to come get a schooner with me, I'm happy.
It's kind of funny, too. It's a bit ironic. You're from Singapore, but you're in Sydney right now, where I'm from, and I'm in Singapore, and I'm actually from Sydney. So it's kind of like that reverse thing going.
We'll swap places one day.
One day, man. Let's do it. So, before we get into some of this singularity stuff, the exponential stuff, can you give the listener a quick bit of a background on who you are and what you're up to?
Okay, so as you guys know, I'm actually the space guy, and when I go to a club and I try to talk to a nice lady, and they ask me what I do, I'll just say I build spaceships.
What's the response to that?
I would say a lot of people think that I'm just pulling their leg. They think I'm at a bar. I'm trying to drop an interesting conversation. So you build spaceships, cool. And then the guy says, "Yeah, I'm a vampire." But
so you actually build spaceships?
Yes, I do, sir.
Okay.
So what I do is that I am right now working with the government of Australia, universities in Australia, corporate entities in Australia on the design and manufacturing of spacecraft and building a space business ecosystem that will actually take Australia to space.
No. Have we ever been to space? I don't think we have.
Well, actually, it's funny. I'll give you two very interesting pieces of note. Australia is actually the third country to have ever put anything in space.
Okay.
All right? Right behind, after Russia, the US, it became Australia right after that. And the second busiest spaceport in the world today is Woomera. Right? Which is in South Australia.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. It is the second busiest spaceport in the world, right behind Cape Canaveral.
So when you say it's the busiest spaceport, I mean, I don't know how much space traffic. Like you say, if you've got the busiest airport, there's a ton of traffic going through that. So when you say the busiest spaceport, how much traffic goes through the second busiest spaceport?
Basically, they launch something every week.
Oh wow! Okay, so wow, that's more than I thought.
Yes.
And are these like runs to? They go on a satellite to the International Space Station. What sort of, when we're talking about launches and traffic, what's going on?
You know what? Actually, no one knows because it's the second busiest, but nobody knows what you're flying. It's all military confidential.
Ah, interesting. Okay. Fair enough. So maybe the military is building a huge base on the moon right now and no one even knows about it.
Exactly. They're defeating our alien master overlords.
Exactly. It's one of those things where, like, it's like the movies where an alien attacks the planet, and only the CIA or only the special, spies and agents know about it. No one else seems to know about it, and they never find out, and their memory gets wiped and all that. Maybe that's what's happening right now.
Yeah, potentially. Yeah, very MIB-like of you.
So, you've been to Singularity University. You said you did the International Space University, which is a space university, and now you've got 5 space startups, and 3 of them are going pretty well. So, what are you thinking? I mean, we had a bit of a chat about this before, but where are you thinking this is going? We talked about what I find really interesting about this is the whole we are wired in our brains to think linearly in terms of 1 plus 1 plus 1. So times 1 30 times, and you get to 30. Whereas if you do like 1 meter exponentially by doubling it every time, you get some pretty big numbers.
That's right.
And that's what's interesting, right? Because most people don't understand this. So when we think about, well, computers are getting, faster every year, our brains don't grasp the speed at which things are starting to move.
That's right. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So go ahead.
I was going to say, so where's it all going?
Well, I think you got to look at, one very simple way to look at it is innovation. Okay, whether you understand the pace of, everyone knows that innovation is getting faster and faster and faster. So the question I'll ask you is, when is innovation going to be so fast that you cannot keep up anymore? So right now, if you think about it, the internet, when it was invented in the 1990s, took 7 years to be adopted by 25% of the American population. Now, electricity, on the other hand, took somewhere around 40 years. Yeah. When it was invented. So if you think about that line, we're going to approach a point where our adoption of new technologies is going to be so rapid that nobody can actually keep up anymore. To give you an idea, Uber, as everyone knows, is the car ride-sharing company, right? Yeah. Now, it came into Australia 2 years ago, and now, 2 years on, it has taken 20% of the taxi market. Yep. Outright. Now, and no one would have expected an organization like Uber to appear. I mean, when it first started, it wasn't worth much. Now it's worth $10 billion. Yep. So companies like that are going to come and go. Data says that an average lifespan of $1 billion company used to be 60 years. It's now going to be 15. So a lot of what we're going to create is going to become irrelevant very quickly. And we have to be accommodate and get used to the fact on how do we constantly innovate to stay in touch, or how do we build a business or an organization that can last for centuries past this point.
That sounds like it's the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, in the sense that because I've heard this before too, like, the $1 billion company lasting 60 years, now it's lasting 15. Someone said recently, this was an article on Forbes, one of these sites, where it said something like 75% of what's on the Inc. 500 or the Inc. 50, some of the top companies in the world, none of those companies exist yet. In the ones in, say, 2020, I don't know what the actual stat was, but it was like 75% of the companies in 2020 that'll be like 75% of the biggest companies in the world in 2020 don't even exist yet.
That's right.
Which is kind of crazy when you think about it. It's like, well, what will those companies be?
Yeah, and you know what? General consensus right at the top, I've spoken to Peter Diamandis, Ray Kurzweil, and a whole bunch of other people. We don't know. We actually have no idea what it's going to look like, So when you think about it for a moment, it's not that we don't know. What it translates into, it's anybody's game.
Yeah. Yeah. One thing I find with this is that, like, we talk about, like, when you read like a self-help book and it's going on about, you've got to get in touch with your dreams from when you were a kid, and how you, if you wanted to be an astronaut, for example, you've got to get in touch with that and find out if you can actually be an astronaut. And if you can't, go and work for a space company, for example. And where this is interesting is I think a lot of people would hear something like this, and it's even people who are very successful with what they do already with life, they're going to have that attitude of, well, I can't really build a space thing. It just feels like it's so far out of reach. Or even be one of the people to build one of these multi-billion-dollar companies in less than, do like Instagram and do it in 18 months or something. And I think that people are, gradually waking up to the point where this is the exponential thing, where when you start to grasp the potential of how an exponential curve works, anyone, if they're willing to do the work and get involved, can go from being just a random person with maybe a small business or something like that, some mild success, but nothing in the grand scheme of things, to going and doing something absolutely life-changing for billions of people on the planet.
Exactly. And that's one of the opportunities we have is that we're now in an age where you can build a big business and you can also save the world at the same time. If you want to be a billionaire, just sell $1 a product where you make $1 from to 1 billion people.
Yeah, that's like that's like what WhatsApp did, right? $1 a year for. I don't think they had I don't know how many people they got on there. They sold it to Facebook for $19 billion, though.
Exactly.
It's incredible. When you think about how fast this stuff, not even just how fast this wealth is being created, that someone can kind of, you got Instagram in 18 months and WhatsApp and, some of these other companies, Viber was something like $900 million. And there's like Instagram had 13 employees.
Yep. 13 employees and was sold to Facebook for $1 billion.
It's incredible. And obviously it's not as easy as just sitting down and building an app and then, you go make $1 billion. But man, it's exciting. Is this to go back to that freedom thing? Is you kind of get to once you've got a business and you've got your freedom and whatever that means to you, whatever level you need to be at, then it's a bit like, all right, you can do anything you want now with your life. You have the time, you have the money for the most part. Now you can do whatever you want. So what's going to get you most excited when you get up in the morning to go and do stuff? Would you really want to sit around and play video games all day, or would you want to go and tell people at the bar that you built spaceships?
You already know my answer. I do the second, and any day in a heartbeat.
Interesting. What? I mean, because you have an accelerator, right?
Yes.
So do you work with younger people, or not necessarily younger, but less experienced people, and set them up and say mentor or coach them, that kind of thing?
Yes, we do.
Yeah. And so how does that work? And what sort of barriers and problems do you run into when you're talking to people about this?
Well, I think the first thing is perception. When I say there's this mentality of to do space, you need to be a rocket scientist, and I'm not a rocket scientist, and therefore I can't do it. Okay. And that's the first thing I'm faced with as a challenge. And what's the funny thing is? I'll give you a real example. There's a satellite. It's called it's 3 satellites. It was launched. It was called the GRACE mission. It was launched to measure the gravity of the Earth's planet field accurately. All right. And on board it had a few sensors. It had a gyroscope, 3-axis accelerometer, and a GPS, and a few other instruments. The first mission was about 200 million. The second follow-on mission was 520 million. And now, if I were to compare that with something that you already have, which would be your smartphone. So it's actually no more than $1,000. You have a accelerometer, you have a GPS, you have a touchscreen, a decent speaker. The cost difference is amazing. So the truth is that we can now actually build satellites really cheap. In fact, if anyone in your audience can Google this. It's called PhoneSat. NASA built it. They basically figured out how to put an Android smartphone in a satellite and make it work. So if you know anything about programming, you're using JavaScript to actually write the Android app, which translates to that if you can make an Android app or do decent basic programming, you can control a satellite.
So you can actually launch your own satellite from your house into space.
Not from your house just yet. I don't have enough rubber bands to do that just yet. But I wish. But you can actually do so. So just from that perspective alone, of difficulty, it's incredible. You can do something.
Yeah.
The next challenge I have is people think it's really expensive. If I ask you right now, how much do you think it costs me to put something in space? What do you think it will cost?
$5,000. Well, I've kind of read some of these books. I was going to say like $5,000.
$5,000. Actually, you're right.
Wow.
Let's not kid ourselves here. So the $5,000 is a launch cost for what we call a CanSat. It's the size of a Coke can, and it's a really small piece of hardware. It's basically there to go up there and say, beep, 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 I exist.
So you can't spy on your friends with it?
No, unfortunately. Look, the cheapest satellite I've ever seen so far built that works, right? It's $50. It's called the $50 satellite.
Yeah.
Okay? Now, you're not going to make a commercial product of it, but that's how cheap it's getting.
Yeah.
Now, for me, I've calculated. If you had between about $250,000, you can actually sit down and design a viable space business. Now, $250 is build, launch, and maintenance of a satellite. You could actually figure this out. You could do it.
Because one thing I've wondered about is how this translates to, like, it could be one thing to kind of sit down and play around with some of this stuff and spend a bit of money just as a hobby kind of thing. But how do you take that $250,000 and make it a business?
Okay. So this is one of the challenges, is that you don't know space, and very people don't understand the model. So one of the interesting things is people do is actually education. If you think about it for a moment, when you have something up there, what are you providing back to Earth?
Information.
Exactly. So the value of the information is, of course, greater than the hardware itself. So if you would provide education, let's say I'm going to teach kids on how a spacecraft works. They're going to walk with me through my journey on building a spaceship, and it goes up. That itself is a potential business, especially with the focus on STEM education.
Yeah.
You know, if you want to talk about, if you put a big enough camera on board, okay, then you fall into the model of Planet Labs, where you're taking photos of the Earth.
Yeah. Okay.
You know, and telling you what's going on. Now, let's go into the next one. We have a special kind of area, which we call, which you always know as GPS. You know, it gives you position, navigation, and timing.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, what's really cool about this that people don't realize is that GPS is not as accurate as you think it is. So when you use GPS and GPS alone, not the cell phone towers, but just GPS, it's plus minus 10 meters accuracy. Now, for you to go down the street to find something there, it's no big deal, right?
Yeah.
Now, if you're flying an airplane and you're going to hit a runway, or you are trying to maximize the land on a farm for you to plant crops, 10 meters is suddenly a very big deal.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of people who are building technologies and services around augmenting GPS, to make it more accurate.
Yeah.
And I've been reading recently on a brand new model for space that at least was brand new to me, is that people have been using GPS to measure waves.
Yeah.
So imagine that it goes over the ocean, GPS hits the ground, it gets reflected back to space. So the signals are then read by a satellite that determines the height of a wave. So potentially, it could be a disaster warning prediction mechanism where it's tracking the Pacific Ocean on a regular basis, and it can say, I detect that a tsunami is happening because the wave has gone up past a certain height, and I'm tracking its movement on approach to a coast.
Okay.
These are the kind of businesses you can build in space, that are actually real today.
Interesting.
I love the conversation of like asteroid mining and space tourism and other things, but those things take time and they are much further away.
Yeah, yeah. So we're talking about if you want to get into space tourism, you need to be Richard Branson with $1 billion budget to go and buy and build and fund the project. But you're saying if you could be anyone, you can put together a company for $250,000.
Yes.
You could even bring on, you don't even need, that doesn't even need to be your 250 grand. You can go and fund that with investors. And you're in business. You're in the space business.
Pretty much.
And what, in terms of because this is pretty exciting to think that anyone these days could start a space company and then be like, well, hey girl, I build rockets. But, in that voice. But, so it's cool in that sense. But then in terms of viability as a business model, is this something that the market is ready for, or is it sort of still like a tinkerer's, kind of still like a hobby field? Okay.
The best way to look at it is to imagine that the space industry now is how the internet was in the early 1990s. It was a wild, wild west. There was a lot of unknowns. Nobody knew how to do everything. If you could figure a way to make money, awesome. And if you didn't, there were plenty of failures as well. But the opportunity is there. When we say we don't know what the next business is going to look like, it's very much a wild, wild west situation.
I like that. Just like the internet was. That's a good parallel. But then that means, though, is that maybe not right now, maybe not for 5 or 10 or 20 years, that there's going to be at some point some kind of a space bubble, just like there was a 2000 tech bubble, where everyone's it sort of reaches that fever pitch where everyone's going crazy because all of a sudden there are companies that are making money. And investors are going insane trying to get in on it. The whole thing's going to implode, and then it's going to be a bit like the internet in that sense. It's a really interesting way to think about it. Because then, let's say that happens at 2025, the whole thing implodes. You get in at 2026 on the ground, when it's all just completely messed up, and it's really easy to start a company really cheap, and or you just buy someone's company. And then it goes back up again in 2030, 2035. So there's going to be a lot of this riding the ups and downs of the next few decades.
Yeah, it's going to. The bubbles will come and go. I mean, there's a housing bubble and everything, so no industry is ever immune to it. Yeah. The difference, I would say, is that the assets. Imagine this: towards the height of the bubble, I get enough money from the capitalist and says, I am going to go and build and capture an asteroid and bring it back to Earth. And this asteroid has $1 trillion worth of ore, okay? Now, somewhere along the way, the bubble bursts. And then my company goes bankrupt. But do you know what? I still have a mission that actually has bringing back a $1 trillion asteroid that's halfway progressing. Yeah. If I've already launched and let's say I've already got the asteroid and I'm on my way home when it bursts, somebody's going to buy me because they want that asteroid. Because that's business. So the bubble is going to be a very different kind of bubble. You're going to have very smart people who know how to buy the right assets to go through the bubble.
What's interesting too, I just realized, is that right now, if you want to go and buy some land and get some, to get the oil out of it, or go buy a mountain and mine some gold, you need to buy it off someone else. But we're talking in space. This is virgin territory that no one's been in. So it's like the first settlers, that no one owns it. So if you're the first person to find the asteroid, you don't have to buy it. It's just your asteroid because you found it first, right?
That's right.
That's kind of insane to think about it, because none of us grew up in that kind of thing where you can imagine if you could just walk into we're from Sydney, right? So you being able to walk into the Blue Mountains and you go, I like this cliff and this patch of land and these 10 acres here. I'm just going to build a house right here because I like the place. It's mine now.
Pretty much.
It's pretty interesting too. I like how simple it is for someone to get into as well. Do you reckon it's right now it's going to be good, or how long do you reckon before it's going to start picking up? It sounds like, from the people I'm speaking to, it sounds like it's right at that point now where it's starting to kick into the next gear. Well,
you know what? I'm going to go against that and say the gear has already kicked in. So I can tell you there's been about 200. I last said there was $1 billion of investment that has already entered the space industry, like Space 2.0, all us small guys and new companies getting started.
Okay.
All right? And we also had the first space skybox imaging was sold to Google for $500 million. And that's the first exit.
What was that? Space Skybox, what's that?
Skybox. So Skybox had a very interesting business. Skybox basically built satellites to take pictures of the Earth, like most people. But what they were trying to take pictures of was of factories. They were and parking lots. They wanted to know how many trucks was going in and out of the Foxconn factory making your iPhone. So they could then go on the stock market and hedge their bets on buying and selling people's stock.
Interesting. Okay, so if you see a whole ton of trucks going out of Foxconn, you're like, Apple's just made a bunch of sales and the share price is going, the company's going to grow in the next, say, few days or few weeks. So it's getting a jump on the market.
Exactly.
That's pretty interesting.
Exactly. So they were bought by Google, and they're doing their thing. So where we're going is absolutely incredible. It's almost impossible to figure out what's going to happen next.
Are you excited about it?
Without a doubt.
That's a silly.
Would I be doing space if I was not excited about it? No, I think it's a very boring thing.
I'm curious, what it's, because I'm not working in space right now, but if I was, I imagine that when I get up in the morning and when it comes to telling people what I do or that kind of thing, it'd be really hard not to be excited about it. It would just be like, I'm working on space. What's better than that?
It's really exciting to wake up every morning. I'm reading books, talking to people that I never thought possible. I honestly started my space journey in January 2013, a little over 2 years ago. And I had not have expected to be sitting in a position where I'm now having conversations with NASA, the European Space Agency. We had this, when I was building, we were in the early days of Delta V when we were getting it off the ground. We had this weird conversation that came across our table. We actually met a diplomatic mission from Japan to Australia, and for diplomacy stuff. And they actually mentioned they were interested in providing discounted launches on the Japanese space rockets as part of their diplomatic package to improve relations with Australia. Now, we'll leave it as that, okay? That's but the very fact that was even mentioned. Now, I'm a startup trying to get stuff off the ground.
Yeah.
I'm not expecting to be talking with big government, let alone, we'll need you to improve our diplomatic relations with another country.
This is top level stuff.
It's absolutely insane. So now I speak with people that, I didn't even believe would even take my call 2 years ago.
Yeah. Moving up in the world, man.
Exactly.
One thing also that Peter Diamandis mentions in bold is, and this makes a lot of sense, that right now we've got billionaires, and billionaires are getting created fairly quickly. He mentions that space is going to be where the first trillionaires are made.
Yes, and I actually agree with that. If you think about it, when I said $1 trillion for an asteroid, I'm not actually pulling a number out of thin air. If you pull up like the data on how big an average asteroid rock is, and you find the right kind of asteroid, some of them have right now a market value of over $1 trillion in ore.
Can you sell that on the open? Is there enough? Is there a market for $1 trillion worth of ore?
Well, considering the global economy is $263 trillion when I last checked, okay. I think the answer is yes.
What sort of ore are we talking about? I'm going to look this up. Is this platinum or something?
Yeah, so we call them platinum group metals. They are the heavier metals. So what happens when a planet is newly formed? It's bombarded by asteroids. As it cools, the heavier metals sink to the core. So the Earth is quite a cool planet. So a lot of them have sunk to the planet. So the ones that we have been mining are relatively recent. And I would say the last, 250,000, 500,000 years?
Yeah.
So when they run out, they run out. But the asteroids still have them.
Yeah, okay. Okay, interesting. This is big stuff, man. This is like next level. But it's cool.
Yeah.
I really think there is that clear path of someone going from, and someone's listening to this probably thinking, well, I just got a website and kind of sell a few products online and stuff. Like, how am I going to do space? It's like, well, you could do it.
Okay.
Yeah, tell me, how do you do it?
I'm going to cut you right there because I'm going to say something for your listeners. Because if you as a listener is saying, I just build a website, I just fix computers, I can't do space. John, you didn't actually ask me what was my background before space. And I'll tell you that my degree was in IT. I would be fixing your internet connection and reinstalling your print drivers. You cannot ever tell me that you can't do space because you just built websites. I cannot, and this is for the technical geeks, I still can't fix the CSS templating on my website by myself. I still suck at basic website design and construction.
Yeah.
Okay, and have a freaking degree in it, and I'm doing spacecrafts. You can because I've done it.
How did you make the transition there? How do you go from being an IT guy who fixes computers to being in space? Did you go to Singularity University? Was there like just a quick transition like that? How did it happen?
Well, I actually thought about it for a while, and I applied to actually study at the International Space University. Now, before you guys think it's an incredible university, I only did a 5-week summer course. That's all I could do. All right? 5 weeks. I got basic knowledge. I got all the slides, I got all the references, and all I did after that was I started reading. My first 12 months after that was just studying and talking to people nonstop. I still don't know the exact technicals of certain details, but I knew enough back then to begin the journey. Now I sit here. I have finished 5 startups. All right. I have created an accelerator. And I'm looking at technologies and solutions that will get me other places. I only finished Singularity University last year, from June to August, when I did the graduate studies program. All right?
Yeah.
It's part of my journey on the way. It was not how I began.
Yeah. So it's because this is one of the things I've been thinking about is reading Bold. So this is the book by Peter Diamandis. Is this idea of it's not impossible to get into. The way I was thinking about it is I was like, all right, well, if I'm so excited about this, what would be the next step? And obviously, you can read a book about it, but the next step, I think, is ultimately going to be connecting with other people who are doing it. So whether you do that by going to the International Space University or going to Singularity University or going to finding, even just online, even like this is why I reached out to you through a mutual friend of ours to kind of be like, I heard you into this space stuff. Can we have a chat sometime? And because that's where it starts, because then you meet someone who's, and so now that you're listening to this, you're going to have the same experience where if you hear someone, even if you're 1 step or 2 steps removed, and you can kind of put yourself in their shoes and think, yeah, maybe I could do that. Maybe like they don't sound that different to me. Just go fix computers. How hard can it be? And that's exactly the sort of response, or that's exactly what happens when you spend time with people who are playing at a bigger level. Is you start to level up without even trying. It's just how the brain works.
Exactly. You want to be a big fish in a small pond or a small fish in a big pond? Take your pick.
So it really seems like it's just that decision, just making that. Because you can't, you're not going to be able to wake up tomorrow and just well, maybe you could just start a space business. But most people they already have a job or have a business or anything like that. So you're saying that someone could have a job right now, and they could still, conceivably, realistically, within the next couple of years, get into the space business if they wanted to.
100%.
Maybe they'll be the first trillionaire in a few years' time.
Yeah, totally agree. You're reading Bold right now. And so one of the things I think you will eventually reach in the book is that everyone you admire in your entire life, be it your parents, be it the billionaire, the teacher across the street, or whoever, the people you admire them because of their ability to overcome the circumstances that were placed before them. So if you look at your life right now, you have things that you have to be responsible for, be it family, a house, a wife, a partner, who knows. Being able to understand and be responsible for them while making sure you can chase the dreams you want to chase is what gets you places. And every single a person that you probably have ever interviewed, you've ever admired, has done that to some degree. Yeah. And the better you are at it, the better you will go places.
Absolutely. Cool. I think that's a good note to finish on. So, before we wrap this up, though, if the listener wants to learn more about you or maybe get in touch with you or hear about this accelerator, where is the best place for them to go?
All right. So, for my accelerator, it's www.deltavspacehub.com. All right. And if you want to get in touch with me, my Twitter handle is boldbrian.
Sweet. Cool. Anywhere else, or that's the two things you want to mention?
Well, you know what? I think that's a great place to get started. If you need to find me, I'm sure you will find me at the TED conference this year.
The TED conference? Okay, the TED, not TEDx, the actual TED conference.
Okay, so I am going to TED Active, which is a conference that runs parallel to the main TED, run by TED this year. Yeah. So I'm going there. I go there every year now. Now to spend time with the people there. So if you see me there, say hi.
Say hi, for sure. Cool. All right, man. I'll have links to all that in the show notes at themcmethod.com. It's been really good talking to you. Thanks for coming on the show.
No, my pleasure.
Hey everybody, thanks for listening. If you want to discover more insider tips, tricks, and secrets about driving sales with email marketing, sign up for daily email tips from the autoresponder guy. Go to dropdeadcopy.com/podcast. Sign up, confirm your email address, and I'll send you daily emails on how to improve your email marketing and make more sales via email. You'll find out why open rates don't matter and the 7-letter word that underlies all effective marketing and much more.